Our gospel reading this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 1 to 12, the Beatitudes. Listen now for the word of God. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." As we contemplate our congregational meeting next week, and we will read the annual report of our congregation, we sometimes wonder, what is the measure for a vital and vibrant congregation? And I think it's not only a question we ask of our congregation, but a question we ask of for ourselves. In all honesty, and I'm saying this with mindfulness and with respect, because I know this is not the case for everyone. But about 3 weeks ago, when I had COVID, it was actually nice to be at home and to be forced just to stay at home, to make time for reading and listening to a book on tape. Although the first 2 days was stressful, and then I settled into the rhythms of grace, just allowing myself to be. And I think this is the question we ask ourselves as well as a congregation. How can we settle into these rhythms of grace? Because most often we measure ourselves in how busy we are. We spend most time at a congregational meeting talking about the budget. We take pride in our surplus, and we ask how many members have joined. But do we ask how much time we've spent in prayer? Do we ask how much time we've made actually time for one another and to do deep listening, getting to know one another, and learning how to respond to one another? To be able to do that takes counterintuitivity. I was always fascinated that right after 9/11 and the horrific events of the destruction of the Twin Towers and the numerous lives lost, is how the first responders moved in as they were cleaning up the rubble and trying to save lives. It's said that on a regular basis, they stopped all activity and they listened. Not only did it stop people from acting from that adrenaline, forcing them and propelling them to save, but to listen gave them the ability to hear the banging of people wanting to be rescued, so that they know where the pockets are where people were captured. But to do that took counterintuitivity. And that, I believe, is the invitation before us. Because the scripture reading that we just shared is an affirmation of who we are as a people of God. You know, when I first read it, and I know for many of us it's very difficult for us to find ourselves within that reading, because it is a very challenging reading. It tells us that God is in the least of these. But yet we forget that we all face places in our own lives where we are the least of these. Nowhere is it as clear as it is a funeral. And Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And when I listen to this story, I think of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings in South Africa, where you have a perpetrator and the victim all in one room, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu reaching out and saying, "Child of God," to victim and perpetrator. Child of God. Blessed are you, says Jesus in the Beatitudes. And yet we find our lives and living lives that are busy. Busyness has become the American way. Ask anybody at any given time, and many of us would say, "I love life, but I am too busy." Interestingly enough, when we ask people about congregations, many times we respond in the same way. We're busy. They say that you can ask many church consultants that works with congregations in declines. And the number one problem that churches face that is actually in decline is busyness. Congregations are too busy. A study of congregations in decline reveals their life is way too full. Most congregations want to do everything as they have always done it. Have you heard that before? We want to do things the way we've always done it, even as we attempt to grow new ministries, even as we attempt to welcome people. And I'm not saying we do that because we're stubborn or we don't want to change our ways. We do it because this is human nature. This is what we know. This is where we feel safe. And yet, the gospel asks of us to learn new ways, to learn new rhythms, to be open to the unforced rhythms of grace. To be sure, there are other factors that contributes to congregational decline. Lack of commitment, declining income, people never able to really find connection among one another, control by a few people, too much stress, and conflicting values. And you see that really when a congregation faces challenging moments. Do we have a common language to help us breach the challenge we face? But they say the greatest of all threats is simply becoming too busy. Too busy to pray, too busy to listen to God's missional call, too busy to make disciples, too busy to meet human needs, too busy. And the question before us is, how do we break that cycle? Because it is in the midst of our frantic lives that Jesus comes to us today, reminding us of a different present tense, a different reality where we are less anxious, less frantic, trusting more and more on the grace of God, and where we have more time for one another and the stranger that come upon our path. In our gospel reading, Jesus is reminding us of a reality where those who mourn are comforted rather than abandoned. Us as a people of God taking the time to comfort, where those or siblings who are hungry are fed, and those who are thirsty are given water. Not ignoring or shouting down people, where the meek inherit the earth rather than being grounded into dust. This is the context of our living, of our behavior, and of our relationships. This is the reality of divine grace, where God's graciousness initiates and precedes our lives as God's favor accompanies our living. And nowhere is that as clear as in the table and the font. So next week, as we meet for our congregational meeting, we will also celebrate a baptism and we will celebrate communion for good purpose. Because by doing that, we remember that we can live according to an ethic, says the theologian Walter Brueggemann, whereby we are not driven, controlled, anxious, frantic, or greedy, precisely because we are sufficiently at home and at peace to care about others as we have been cared for. Because in those sacraments, we celebrate God's generosity that's beneath all life, that's beneath our lives. So how do we live such counterintuitive lives? How do we do that? Well, it's possible. This past Advent, we did something we did years ago, and that is to say, we're not going to have any session meetings or any committee meetings. Well, some committees succeeded in doing that, some didn't, and that's okay. But we forget that God's kingdom can happen without a committee meeting. And what did we do with our extra time? We actually spent it with one another. We gathered on the lawn with our Christmas grilling. I got to get this right because I get this wrong time after time. Christmas, thank you. Grilling tongs and singing songs. Thank you. And it was amazing around those tables how people discovered one another. And that was an act of resistance. To say we're going to break the cycle is an act of resistance. So today I want to introduce, because we're unpacking how can we make this counterintuitive living happen. I want to introduce you to the concept of rest as protest. You know, for me, everything's got to come back to social justice, I just want to live up to my, my being. So if we think of protest, we think of the civil rights movement, and we think of the labor rights movement. But have you ever contemplated that the little lives we live can be an act of protest? I want you to try this. If you're still working, church staff, you're free to do this. Call in this week and say, I'm going to take a mental health day. Because that is an act of protest. That is to tell teachers, do you take mental health days? Never. Good for you. I live with two retired people, Beth and Mary Alice. They are way too busy. They need rest as protest. And rest as protest is actually very biblical. Can you all think of examples? In creation, when God created the earth in 6 days. And on the seventh day, what happened? Rested. Do you know the concept of Jubilee? And that is that everybody, earth, land, animals, people, needs to rest. So here is the challenge for us as we meet as a congregation. How do we read our reports and how do we contemplate and find a new way of what it means to be a vital congregation? What does it mean to say we're going to spend more time with one another? What does it mean not only to look at certain things and say these are the measures of success? I also want to invite you to another opportunity before us, and that is Lent. Let's revitalize Lent. Yes, the challenge to session and committee chairs. Let's try not to meet during Lent as committees and as a session and say we commit ourselves in using the time we would have spent on a committee meeting in being part of a small group and studying and getting to know one another better. For new members who have just joined our congregation, find out more what it means to be in a Lenten small group. Help us find times that's convenient for you so that we can create opportunities to be in such a small group. But I think where we are in our lives right now as we're emerging from COVID, now more than ever, it is important for us to make that time to be counterintuitive, to make that time to be together. Let's give it a try. Because if we do, we will discover more and more the unforced rhythms of God's grace. Amen.